I will have a link to this worksheet in the description should you guys wish to follow along this process. This is how I choose what project to work on. When it comes to a project, there's three things that are central to determining what type of project you want to work on. Those are scope, your skills, and your interest. And ideally, you want to choose a project that is at the center of these three things. Scope is how large or small your project is. So it's the size of it. So like a small game, tic-tac-toe, that has a very tight scope or small scope. Whereas a big MMO like World of Warcraft has an enormous scope. Your skill, kind of self-explanatory, but it's what do you already know how to do? And in the beginning, this will most likely be a pretty small category. You might not know how to do much. And then your interest is what kind of stuff interests you. So the first thing I will think about is my skills. What skills do I have? Well, I know that I am good at programming. So I'm good at code, I'm okay at art, and I'm okay at game design. So what this tells me is I want to do something that has a relatively simplistic art style, so it's within my art capabilities. And I want to focus on a single core loop for my gameplay, meaning I don't want to design a whole bunch of different systems that are super complex and intertwined with each other, because that's difficult to do, and I'm not the best at game design. So instead, I'm going to focus on how can I make one loop that is very well executed because I'm good at code. So that will give me an example of what kind of skills I have. So the next category I'll mess around with is scope. For scope, I'm going to think about other games that I've either played or watched or consumed or what have you that have a scope that I think I could make. So the first things that come to mind is something like Binding of Isaac, possibly Hades, although that's on the large side of scope. So these are all indie titles. They tend to follow a formula where you have a very core gameplay loop that is then iterated on, and then there's some sort of randomness to it. So from an art perspective, they have like a tile map. So I'm going to use Hades, for example. I might insert some images here. For Hades, you have 3 different environments that have the same art for each of their environments. There's different room configurations, but it's the same art. So they essentially had to make 3 different sets of art, as opposed to making unique art for each room and each environment and what have you. So that limits the art scope. Binding of Isaac, it has a very simple art style in that there's not a lot of very highly detailed rendered stuff. It's all simple shapes, simple shading, but it still looks convincing. And again, it has the same kind of gameplay loop to it, where you have a guy that can move around and shoot at things, and you can get power-ups. Both of these have RNG elements to make the replayability fun, so that might be something worth looking into. That kind of RNG elements is very code focused. It's not so much design or art focused, although there are design elements that come to like balancing it. So I'm going to take these as my scope. And what do I have interest in? So here I will just do themes. So for instance, I like old Norse stuff, Warring States period Chinese stuff, ancient Egyptian stuff. The other thing I consider, so I've been doing this for a little bit, is I'll know I'll get bored if there's something that I can't learn from each project. I want to make sure I'm learning new stuff. So for me, one thing that I like to learn is new mechanics. So I've done a top-down shooter before, so I feel pretty confident in this genre. So I think I want to do something in this genre. However, I haven't done a bow technique, and Horizon Zero Dawn is one of my favorite games. So maybe I can implement some type of combat loop that's inspired by that game. So I want to have bow stuff, and this will force me to do animations. So some more detailed animations, because I normally don't do a lot of animation work. So I'm going to try and do more simplistic animations and see if I can maybe do some layered animations where I've got the feet walking around or running around, and then I've got a different animation for the upper body for like shooting or attacking or interacting. So after I've gone through this process, I just start thinking, and I spend some time thinking about like what could be cool and what kind of all of that kind of stuff. And what I've come up with is top-down shooter with the player is a archer. The theme is going to be Norse tomb exploration. Think along the lines of, say, like Skyrim or something like that. And I'm going to do the vertical slice first. So the vertical slice is a concept where you do one level polished with detail to prove your concept. So this is after your prototype. You just make it look good on one level, and then that's where you can normally bring in if you want to like get publishing or crowdsourcing, like GoFundMe or any of those types of websites. The vertical slice is what you normally use to try and sell your game. So in my case, the vertical slice is going to be the main concept that we're going to focus on for this tutorial. And later on, if it seems like this is a good game that people like, we can turn it into a complete game. But most importantly is in vertical slice, all your main mechanics need to be there. So you might not have some unique special mechanics, but like if you want to have an inventory system, you need to have the inventory system. If you want to have a crafting system, you need to have the crafting system, so on and so forth. So the vertical slice is going to be one tomb that you explore. I'm going to say there's going to be 2 enemy types plus 1 boss fight. Possible puzzles. So now this becomes the foundation for this project. So I'm going to go through the process again. The first step is you want to figure out what your skills are. Once you know what your skills are, and again, they might be small when you're starting off, which just means you want to keep your scope very small at the beginning. So that way you can learn some stuff, but you don't have to learn how to do everything. So step 1 is figure out your skills. Steps 2 is find inspiration of a scope that you think you can do. So I recommend at the very beginning you start off with something like Flappy Birds, Tic-Tac-Toe, or something like that. Something that's incredibly small scope, because you're going to be focusing on learning like how to code or how to do art or that kind of stuff. So you want to keep your game design elements as small as possible. Then the next part is to figure out your interests. So these are just identifying themes that you find interesting. And then you want to see how you can combine all 3 of these together. Keep in mind what kind of stuff you would have to learn. So for me, I've done multiple top-down shooters before, so I know how to do all the core top-down shooter stuff. So I'm not worried about movement. I'm not worried about spawning. I'm not worried about shooting or scoring or any of that kind of stuff. So I was like, what can I add to this project to allow me to do different or unique stuff? So I came up with, it'd be cool to take the combat system from Horizon Zero Dawn, at least some part of it, and put it into a top-down shooter. So that's the learning category for me. This is the process I would go through. So what I recommend, if you're going to follow along this tutorial, is you go through this process, stick to a top-down shooter, so most of the code that I do and stuff will be relevant to you, but change the theme maybe, or change the scope maybe, or change the any unique stuff you want to learn for it. So I do always advise trying to learn some stuff that's not taught in a tutorial so that it helps you kind of learn how to learn, which I'll go into in a different video. I've kind of touched on it before in a video I'll link above, but it's an important skill. I will, of course, answer any questions you guys have in the comments if you want to learn unique stuff for your game and help you guys with all that. I'll even do some videos on that if you guys have specific mechanics you want to figure out how to do. I hope you guys found this interesting. This is the process I go through anytime I start a project. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons, and I'll see you in the next one.